Hi everyone, we're going to go over the key points of our overview of the skeleton. The skeleton is divided into axial and appendicular divisions. The axial division is along the axis of our body, so our skull, our vertebrae, our rib cage, and all the way down to the sacrum. Our appendicular skeleton are appendages, anything that's hanging off of the axial skeleton. So the shoulder blade, clavicle, and arm, and then we have the hip girdle, femur, and lower leg and feet for the appendicular skeleton. There are two types of bone. There's compact bone, which is smooth and very consistent or homogeneous. So out here on the edge we have this compact bone. And then on the inside we have spongy bone. And spongy bone is made out of these columns that are called trabeculae. And there's lots of space in between those columns, and the space is filled up with things like blood vessel, marrow, what have you. We have 6 different classifications for bone. Most of the bones that we think of when we hear the word bone are long bones. They are longer than they are wide. They make up things like our arms and our legs, our fingers. Short bones are more cube-shaped, so the bones of our wrists and our ankles are short bones. We have flat bones that are thin, often curved, so our clavicle, our shoulder blade, those are both some good examples of flat bones. We have irregular bones, not long, not short, not flat. So vertebrae are crazy irregular, right? There's no one single shape in a vertebrae. And then the last two we have sesamoid bones, and sesamoid bones are bones that grow or form between tendons. And so our kneecap is a great example of a sesamoid bone. We also have smaller ones, usually near our thumb and sometimes kind of in our feet. And then the last type of bone are wormian or sutural bones. And these are itty-bitty bones that develop in the sutures of our skull. So between the two larger bones, there are these small bones in the sutures. A long bone has 2 knobby ends, and those are called epiphyses. 1 epiphysis, 2 epiphyses. And a long part in the middle is called the diaphysis. At the epiphyses, we tend to be able to see these epiphyseal lines, and these are the remnants of growth plates, the areas where bone grew from during childhood and adolescence. In the middle, we have what's called our medullary cavity. And most of our bones, when we're adults, the medullary cavity is filled with yellow marrow or fat. The outside of our bone is covered by tissue that's called periosteum. It's the outer covering of bone. Then the first layer of bone is compact bone. The second layer of bone is spongy bone. And then lining that medullary cavity is a connective tissue layer called the endosteum. And you can see over here that perforating that periosteum are these blood vessels. So blood vessels go through the periosteum and into the bone. The structure of compact bone is so cool. It looks like a bunch of tree trunks that have been kind of bundled together. And so each of these tree trunks, you can see these rings, is called an osteon. At the center of the osteon is a central canal, and these rings are called lamellae. And in between the rings, you can see them right here, you can see these little black dots, and those black dots are actually the bone cells, the osteocytes. And the osteocytes are in little openings between the lamellae called lacunae. And so we have these little bone cells, osteocytes within the lacunae, and then the rings that form the osteon are lamellae. Before we start studying the individual bones, you might want to review Table 8.1. Table 8.1 goes through a bunch of the names that are used in describing bone markings or bone landmarks. Things like tuberosities, large rounded projections, the bony part of your bottom are your ischial tuberosities. We have crests and trochanters. Trochanters are other bumps. Most of us are familiar with that kind of that hip bone on the side, and that's your greater trochanter. Tubercles, epicondyles. Epicondyles are an important one. Epicondyles tend to be found at the end of a long bone. We can see one over here. And it's above the condyles. So the condyles are where bones meet with other bones, and the kind of bumpy region above the condyles are the epicondyles. So those are just a few examples. Table 8.1 is very long. This is just a very small section of it. So please read through it before you start studying the other bones.